Showing up. This is the Littleton Board of Health meeting for Wednesday, December 9th on Zoom. I'll read the Zoom regulations. The town of Littleton began conducting remote participation / Zoom meetings pursuant to Governor Baker's emergency order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law on March 19th, 2020. Since that time, unanticipated legal concerns related to the open meeting law have been brought to our attention by the town clerk. These concerns were supported by the Attorney General's office and confirmed by town council. One concern is that the chat function allows a parallel text conversation to the board's public meeting. Chat is essentially running commentary that is occurring, but is not moderated or followed by the chair. All participants and listeners may not be aware of the comments being made because some meeting participants join by phone and do not see these conversations. Another concern is conversations between residents within the chat room, which are not incorporated into the public record. In response to these concerns, the town will implement the following changes, which in no way prohibit any member of the public from participating in discussion and sharing information during the public meeting, and will ensure that all listeners and participants have equal access to this meeting. The people that join Zoom meeting are set so their microphones are muted. If you call in by phone, please use *6 to mute or unmute your phone so that the meeting can occur in an orderly fashion. We ask that people who join keep their microphones on mute so background noises do not interfere with the meeting. If you wish to participate in the meeting, please use the raise your hand function available on Zoom, or if you called in by phone, dial *9, which will activate the raise your hand function. The meeting host will notify the chairperson of the raised hands, and the chairperson will determine whether and when to allow public comment. When called upon, participants should unmute and state their names and addresses. After speaking, we request that the participant return their microphone back to mute. So it looks like everybody's here tonight. Thanks, guys, for all showing up. 7 o'clock, the first public hearing for 37 Warren Street, John Riley, Hancock Associates, for a variance request. Excuse me.
Actually, my supervisor, Brian Gaudreau, is going to be presenting our request.
Okay, he's on his way.
Good evening. For the record, Brian Gaudreau with Hancock Associates, out here for 37 Warren Street for Homelight Property Group. What we have before you is we have a single-family home that failed Title V inspection. It's been unoccupied for a number of years now, and Homelight Properties took ownership of the parcel and conducted a Title V inspection, which ultimately failed due to the system being in hydraulic failure. So what we've done is we've done a redesign, no increase in flow. Basically, the building is going to be rehabbed, maintaining the assessor's designation of 2 bedrooms. The Title V report that's out there, it's a 3-bedroom system. If I could put up the plan.
That'd be great.
So this is the design that we've come up with. 37 Warren Street is located in the center. Warren Street is to the south, single-family home resides to the west, and 495 is the sole abutter to the north and east. There's a driveway in the front, water service comes in the front, garage on the left, single-family house on the right. The existing field is somewhere around the woodshed. We located part of it when we were out there conducting soil testing. We actually dug it up, so we know that that's the general location that it's in. What we've done for design is we've designed a Presby system, and we're here before you this evening for local variance approval for the repair. It's fill within 10 feet of the lot line, and also the Presby groundwater reduction to 2 feet from 4. And the reason why we're asking for those 2 is if you take a look at this lot, it's very, very small. It's predominantly taken up by the house. The only place is the side and rear yard for a septic system. And based on soils and kind of the geometry of the lot, the backyard was the best place to site the system. So what those 2 variances allow us to do is to tuck the system back towards Route 495. There is an existing fence in that location, and we are not disturbing the fence, the property line, nor introducing any sort of retaining walls. We've angled the Presby system such that we could get a little drainage swale to convey any runoff heading towards the back portion of the site, kind of into the existing low point in the northwest corner behind the shed, kind of where everything goes right now. It's away from the single family house. And then the 2-foot reduction to groundwater is what's allowed by the IA approval for Presby for repairs. And again, what we're trying to do is we're trying to minimize that mound and potentially maintain as much of a usable yard as possible. The tank that's there today was going to be ripped out, 1,500 gallon tank put in. So it should be relatively straightforward. We did have some back and forth with Mr. Gareffi. I don't know if
He's here
has
tonight.
shared any comments with the board or is currently on, but basically there were 5 comments that came out of our initial submission, and what we have shown on the screen is the most recent revision. Just to run through these 5 comments quickly, there was a concern about additional soil testing. We do have 2 perks and 1 deep per Title V's requirement for repair, and there was a concern that potentially there was ledge in the further portion of the system. It's in the location of the existing system, and what we did is we scheduled soil testing for Friday to alleviate those concerns. We do feel that we are fully compliant, so it is kind of at the board's discretion if we want to conduct that additional testing or wait until bed bottom inspection, essentially. The second comment was for a water line. The water line has been put on the plans, located at the front of the system. The third note is just indicating that the assessor has 2 bedrooms, and while we have a 3-bedroom design, we are seeking deed restriction to 2-bedroom. The existing design that's out there is 3 bedrooms. We're mirroring that to make sure that we're not going to run into any sort of hydraulic failures as well. Question number 4, or comment number 4, was for the variance for fill within 10 feet of the lot line, which is why we're here before you this evening. And comment number 5 was just an indication of a discrepancy on inverts that has been rectified. So with that said, I'm happy to answer questions.
Okay, does anybody from the board have any questions?
Deed restriction. That's it, for 2-bedroom.
He's fixed that. Okay. Anybody else?
Brian, how was the perk rate?
So the perk rate is 10 minutes an inch, so not too bad. Groundwater is 3.5 feet down, so not bad.
And your abutter notification for Interstate 495, how did that go?
Yeah, so that didn't really go.
Okay.
we had conversations with the assessor about that, and we notified everyone we could.
Louise or Mike, do you have any questions at all?
I don't have any questions. Looks good.
Mike Zeldin, do you have any questions? I think you're on mute, Mike. I don't hear you.
He needs his shirt.
Sorry. I have any abutters, Janet? Anybody raising their hands?
I don't think there is any better.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I have no
Hand
comment.
raised.
I have no comments.
So Jim, are you here? Can you give us your comments?
Sure. So I witnessed testing out there on the site with John, and again, the soil that was there was decent, as indicated by the perk rate. My concern, and I expressed it at the time when we were doing soil testing, that if we didn't site the system right on those holes, we need to come back and do some additional testing. Is that the holes that are shown aren't terribly deep, and there seems to be ledge there. So I would rather find out where the ledge is before we start to construct the system, than instead waiting till the system is underway and then having to redesign at that point. I don't have an issue with the variances that are being requested. I think they're reasonable. With 495 as the abutter, I don't think there'll be issues with drainage, because I think 495 there's either a little bit of a drop there, or it goes up a little bit, or maybe both. Maybe it goes down then back up again. So again, I don't think there's an issue there. The area is all served by town water. There are no wells around the house. So again, I don't have an issue with the two requested variances. The deed restriction is important, and just verifying that we have the soil conditions for the standpoint of Title V.
And Brian, you said you're doing the soil testing on Friday?
We have it scheduled. So if it's the board's wish to go through with that in lieu of witness the bed bottom, then yes, it's already scheduled.
Jim, will you be there for the soil
Yeah.
testing?
Yep. They have it scheduled with me to go out and take a look at it. Yep.
Okay.
And that would be my recommendation to the board.
Okay. Do you guys want to continue it until we find out about the soil testing, or do you want to approve it with contingents that Jim is satisfied with the soil testing on Friday?
It's not easy for them coming back again.
I'll make a motion to approve it as presented, as long as Mr. Griffey is satisfied with the soil testing on Friday.
Right, I second.
Okay. We'll do a roll call. Kevin Baker. So was that a good enough motion, Janet? Okay. So Kevin Baker,
Kevin Baker, yes.
Gino Filoni,
Gino, yes, thank you.
Louise Nichols,
Louise Nichols, yes.
Mike Zeldin,
Mike Sheldon, yes.
and Lisa Flanagan, yes. So as long as Jim says it's okay on Friday, Brian,
Right.
good to go.
Perfect. Thank you very much for your time this evening.
All right. Good night.
Take care.
And we're a little bit early. We've got 4 minutes before we have to go with for the Ivy Road Lake Drive. Do they have their screens to share and everything ready?
Ian's coming in now. Ian, you're muted.
Good evening.
Ian, we just have to wait a few more minutes just
Sure.
Not 7:15 yet.
Sure.
Are you all set to share your screen, Ian?
Yes.
Okay.
How was everybody's Thanksgiving? Quiet?
Quiet, right. It's kind of nice though
I liked it.
so relaxing.
I know.
No stress.
Some of us might not go back to the old way.
I'm with you. It's a nice-
I just liked how it was just it was like a real day off, you know, didn't have to go to work, no stress, didn't have to make a big old meal.
I'm going to continue it for Christmas.
Are you? Mhm.
I'm sure it'll be worse
Will
by
it go
then.
over? Will it go over like a lead balloon like it did? Oh. Are all your kids home, Louise?
Oh yeah. A house full of young adults is not easy.
How were Emma's finals?
She hasn't had them yet. Her last week of classes was last week, Friday. And this whole week is like a study week for a whole week. Usually it's only 2 days or 3 days. And she has finals next week. It's ridiculous. So dragged out.
All right. It's 7:14. We're going to go.
All right.
Okay. So go ahead, Ian.
Good evening. We've been here before. We were here 3 weeks ago and started presenting this plan for Ivy Road, which I suppose I managed to get this on the screen. Not sure why it's not coming up. Share screen. Uh, Something's not working here. There we go. I don't know. There you go. Can you see that or?
Yes.
Okay.
Enter it a little bit. There you go.
Okay. This is the property. I can make it a little smaller. On the corner of Lake Drive and Ivy Road, we'll be putting in a 2-bedroom house. We're limited. It's only 8,521 square feet lot. And it's a 2-bedroom house and the septic system with a retaining wall and fill within the 10-foot of the property line. We have had some reaction from the butter immediately to this side. That's Gregory Barron and Martina Kalnin. And the immediate reaction was concern about runoff on their property. So I included the trench drain on the side here, and there's a detail exactly what that is. Basically just a stone drain with a pipe. It comes out at natural grade at the bottom. There were other concerns from the abutters engineer that I would like to address, but I gave this all to Jim Gareffi, and I wondered if he had a chance to review that. I can address those issues. I have other information to show on it. Also some photographs out there on Ivy Road. Essentially, and I showed these, I did give these to Jim Gareffi. From when their engineer gave their presentation, they were showing water running across the road from Ivy Road down here. Well, I think as any engineer would know that water goes across contours and not with contours. So water doesn't go this way, it goes that way, and it would go down here. But if you actually go out to Ivy Road, and when I did take some photographs, there is a little swale on the top side of this road, and the majority of the water is running right here. And I can show you those on photographs. Here is Ivy Road. This is the bottom side. This is the top side. And this is where the water is running.
I don't see anything, Ian.
Can you see that? Sorry.
I just see your drawing. I don't see any photographs.
Okay. Okay. So let's just, let's get back to, yeah, sure. Not sure how. I get this up here.
So can you go without the photographs and just explain it to us?
Yeah, sure. I mean,
We'll have Jim comment.
Yeah, basically what's happening here is, yeah, this is the screen we're sharing, right? There is water running on the top of the road and comes down down Lake Drive. So, and their concern was, because we're preventing the water coming across this property here, it would be pushing it onto their property. Well, essentially the water is still going to be going, any water that comes from Ivy Road, and there's a very small amount actually coming from Ivy Road because the majority of it is in the swale on the top side, it then goes down Lake Drive. Only a very small water is going to come down here. And that's why I put in a little trench drain to make sure that the water is contained. And I believe I've covered their concerns. There were other comments made, and I don't think they're worth even addressing. Issues like mounding, contaminating groundwater, these kind of issues. We are to code. We have a very fine soil that does a much better job than a more pervious soil, and it's only 2 bedrooms, so the impact is minimal. And I think that's a fair argument, and I would like to give Jim Gareffi a chance to give his opinion on this.
Sure. Is the other, well, are those the only concerns that they brought up? Was the water going across Ivy Road and going into their yard?
Essentially, yes. I mean, the others was contaminating of groundwater,
Okay.
which, I mean, I think we're doing as good a job as anybody could possibly do in a situation like this with a septic system. I mean, it's very small. It's only 2 bedrooms, and it is on a very fine soil. So it should do a pretty good job of cleaning the water.
Okay, Jim, do you have comments? Or do we have questions? What should we do first? Comments or questions from the board? You could probably clear things up a little bit more, Jim.
So again, I have reviewed the abutters engineer's letter. I have looked at the electronic plan, although I have to talk to Ian about some changes I think I need to have to the plan as I look at the engineer's comments. So I'm just going to kind of go through the concerns as I saw them on that letter and try to let you know what I think and how I think they may need to be addressed. There's some general overall comments by the design engineer that I'm probably not really capable of defending or even explaining. He talks about flow, subsurface flow. I don't know which way the groundwater is flowing on that site. I could guess by the way the contours are, how that's flowing, so I can't really address that. He has some impervious, loading rates that I can't really speak to. But here's the things that I can speak to. He mentions the impervious barrier that goes around the inside of those walls and the depth of that barrier. That's something that probably can be addressed, and I'll address that with Ian. The Title V guidance for barriers talks about having the bottom of the impervious barrier put into natural soil. So that barrier just doesn't need to be that deep in the soil. So we could probably, and these are the things I can talk to Ian about, adjust that barrier to take care of some of the concerns from the abutters engineer. The wall height, again, this is one of those things where because so much of the lot's being developed and the lot's getting built up so much, the biggest concern I see is the abutters and water from this side onto the abutter site. So Ian's plan shows the grading at the toe of the slope of the wall and on the outside of the wall. And that's done to try to, I don't want to say get around it, but if you have more than 4 feet of exposed wall, I think you need to get a special permit from the town. It needs to have a railing at the top of it. There's those requirements with it. So I think we can have a conversation with the building inspector and see if in fact that grading meets those requirements. And the reason I say that, particularly on the abutter side, if we needed to have less fill for the toe of the slope to try to minimize the height of that wall, and maybe they need to get a special permit, but it allowed the applicant to do a little bit more grading and drainage on that side to kind of ameliorate any concerns the abutters have, that might be a path the board might want to consider. The soil logs, the abutters engineer talked about the soil logs. I can see his point. They don't seem to match up. I think Ian has corrected those on the plan, this plan that's here. I think there's at least one other hole that's not shown on the plan. I'll talk to Ian about getting all that information on the plan. I don't think it's an issue because I witnessed the testing. I know where the test holes are. I don't have a concern about where the water table is or where the perks are. So, but the plan should correctly represent the testing that was done on the site.
Mm-hmm.
The abutters engineer talked about what appeared to him, I think, a confusion about what the breakout requirements were for, or what the breakout design was for this plan. Often engineers have standard details that they put on the plan. And I think what the abutter was talking about was there's a standard detail on this plan that shows kind of a cross section of the trenches, and it gives a 15-foot mark out to what would be breakout. And then you typically you go out 15 feet level from the top of the system, slope the ground after that 3-to-1, and that's the standard breakout requirements. Well, we can't do that here because there's not enough lot to do it. So in this case here, there's a retaining wall design. So if you go down to the scaled profile on Ian's plan, it actually shows how the breakout is being met on this site. So again, I don't think there's any confusion. I get the fact that that's a detail that probably a standard detail that goes on all the plans. The engineer for the abutter makes a comment about a layer of compact soil underneath the whole site based on soils maps. Title V doesn't let us do soil testing by soil maps. We actually have to go out and dig test holes in the ground. Those soil maps and that information does inform our decisions when we're out there making, me witnessing and them doing the soil testing. So again, we dug the test holes. We ran the perk tests in the most restrictive layer. I believe the soil testing that was done meets Title V. Let's see. They talk about the creation of impermeable space on the site and the fact that it's being filled up so much and what that might mean for the abutting property. I guess most of the site, with the exception of the roof and that little piece of driveway, should be pervious material, should be lawn, whatever the case may be. So though it's raised, I don't think it, if we could deal with the surface drainage, I think that addresses the concern. I know in some cases, because I've seen this at new house lots, the town, the building inspector, conservation, I'm not sure who, actually has them put in like basins for the roof runoff so that you can address the water coming off the roof. I don't see one on this plan. I don't know if it's always a requirement, but I often see that on new plans. That might be an additional thing that could be done to minimize runoff from the site. And then there's in the concerns, the engineer has kind of a discussion of by putting all of this fill on the site that's necessary to raise the system above the water table, you may be impacting the consolidation of the soil and the compactness of the soil. Again, not an engineer. I would assume as long as we don't touch the underlying soil, it's probably as compact as it's going to be. When they install a system, they'll excavate the soil under the system and 5 feet around it. We usually require that they loosen up the soil before they put the sand fill in there, just so you get a good interface with the sand and the underlying soil. So I don't really know what the engineer is getting at with that comment. It's not really addressed in Title V. Again, in Title V, you remove the top and sub, you get down to the soil that you perk, to the permeable soil, you build the sand up from there. The sand is almost always more permeable than the underlying soil. So my recommendations, I think, on the plan is I'll work with Ian to kind of clean up the last little bit of things that I think are a concern. Again, I think we need to think about, and Ian's already kind of started with the design of a stone trench there, how to mitigate surface water. I haven't been out there when it's raining. One of the things right across the street from this lot on the other side of Ivy Road, there's a repair septic system. And so that mound comes down to the edge of Ivy Road also. So again, unfortunately, this neighborhood is high water table. But I think we should do the things that we need, the things that we can do on this site to mitigate surface runoff. Talking about raising the barrier so it's meeting the Title V guidance and not any deeper than it needs to be. And then, as part of looking at the site overall and how we might address the surface drainage, whether we need to have a discussion with the building inspector about whether whether we remove that soil along the base of the wall to give us more room to actually do some site drainage. I guess I would defer to Ian about how much water the trench can haul and how that might affect the abutter. Now, the engineers, the abutters engineer talks about concern of the abutters cesspool that's on that site there. As long as we can keep the water table, the surface water of this site off of that site, it shouldn't pond on their site, and I wouldn't expect affect the cesspool on their site.
Can I just make one comment there about putting in any kind of drainage system as to whether it's required or not. I spoke to Maren Toohill about that and what the regulations are on that, and she said as long as your lot is under 1 acre, they do not require it. So. So that's why I didn't do anything about it. I could have. I feel, though, that the way that the runoff is going and the way it is on Ivy Road right now, as those photographs I showed you, I can bring them up. I see how I've got to do that. I got to take this one off and bring the other photographs up. There is certainly water at the top of Ivy Road flowing onto Lake Drive. So we really don't have much water coming down here at all. And you can see the way that this driveway is sloped. It's sloping to Lake Drive. And that's the idea here, is to keep the water towards Lake Drive, which is in any way sort of the direction which it's traveling. So I don't know where you want to go. If you want to talk further about this, Jim, I'm happy to do that. But I think, as far as the exposed wall goes and how much of it is exposed, there's only 3 feet at this point. I don't see any benefit of removing the soil at the bottom of the stone wall, the retaining wall.
Does anybody have any questions on the board?
I understand that Maren suggested that we don't have to do this drainage, but I think maybe we should.
Well, that's why I put in this trench drain. What the trench drain does is there to at least keep the water on their property, so that it doesn't go to the abutters property.
Do you think that's enough, Jim?
So, again, there's probably a lot of surface hydrology that goes into figuring out if that's enough. But I guess my thought would be there's a very little room between the edge of that fill and that property line for them to put these trenches in. And then, it's a matter of trying to direct the water that may come off the site and off the road. So I haven't had a chance to look at how deep that is. I would like to talk to Maren about, that seems kind of counterintuitive to me, that if you have a bigger lot, you only need it if you have a bigger lot as opposed to a smaller lot. Maybe that's just a statutory requirement. They say, lots this big and above have to have it. I don't know. I just don't know enough about that. Because I have seen smaller lots where they've put in your roof drainage chambers so that they can put the water in the ground instead of having it go out onto the site.
And by when you talk about drainage, are you talking about like storm drains on the street, or are you talking about material?
From my perspective, it would be something just to be able to carry the water around the lot. So if any water that comes off the lot or come onto the lot that now is, instead of being kind of flat to the rest of the site, is now 4 or 5 feet higher, just making sure that water that would have gone across the lot has a way to get across the lot without going onto the abutter's property. And again, I think generally speaking, the design meets Title V. There's some of the little tweaks I want to talk to Ian about, but I think generally it meets Title V.
So would the, sorry, Lisa,
No, go ahead.
Would the roof drains be just better to do that instead of the swale?
No, I think you really probably need that swale. What happens is, there may not be a lot of sheet flow of water coming across at any given time, but where we see problems with drainage from lot to lot is like February, where the ground is frozen still and we get 2 inches of rain. And there's just no way to control where that water's going. So having the stone drain at least gives it a place to be, as opposed to just sheeting across the lot. So I think, like I say, I haven't had a chance to take a look at the design of it, but I think that is the right start to that. Having, and some of the other lots, I'm trying to think where I've seen them. They'll put like some of these Cultec chambers or Storm Tech chambers, 1 or 2 in the ground, and pipe the roof runoff into those, just so it again isn't running off on the site. I think on a normal day, a normal summer day, although I'm not sure what normal is anymore, because we still seem to get these 2-inch rainstorms that we never seem to, we haven't. They're a more recent phenomenon than they have been since I started doing this work. Those are the concerns we have, that flooding somebody else's site.
Yeah, actually, and Jim, I mean, I could put a Caltech chamber up on this right corner up here to take the roof runoff.
Yep.
I mean, I don't think we've got enough room down the bottom here. We have to be, I think, 25 feet from a septic system.
The drainage, I mean, that corner would probably be best because you got it filled anyway, so.
Yeah, I'm going to fill it anyway. And we got soil tests here. We know what the water table is. We can make sure we're 2 feet above it. I mean, I can certainly put a Caltech chamber in there.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'd like to talk to Maren just to get a sense of that.
Yeah.
Have a chance to review the plan with Ian, make the tweaks.
Yeah, so it sounds like we should, seems like there's still a lot more to discuss between you guys.
That's up to you. Jim, do you want to meet up at some point or discuss this at some point or?
Yeah, no, that's fine. With this COVID stuff, that time seems to be diminishingly small these days, but absolutely. I'd like to sit down and kind of go over the plan with you. Like I said, I can, with the soil testing, I can probably provide you with the notes that clear up those questions. And then we can talk about how you might be able to, again, with surface water mitigation, it needs to be conspicuous, it needs to be effective. And I just want to make sure that that's the case.
So if it's all right with our board, I think that you guys should tweak this plan a little bit more, because Ian, you still have to go to Conscom too, right?
Right.
So I think you want it to be in really good shape, acceptable before you. Oh, Kevin has a question, or were you just scratching your head?
I was doing both, actually. I just want to make a comment. In the words of the great Tom Parabolotis, I feel like we're trying to fit 10 pounds of stuff in a 5-pound bag here. I don't think this lot, was ever meant to be built upon based on our regulations, and I just don't feel comfortable with the current proposed plan.
Okay. Mike, do you have any questions or comments?
No, I think your suggestion of giving Ian and Jim a chance to sit down and iron out all the details, because this is given the lot and the neighbors and they're trying to basically do a Title V compliance, and they run into other problems, and they've got to be solved because almost for the reasons that Kevin just mentioned. I mean, this is really a borderline case of should we or shouldn't we? So, but
Right.
but since it's within Title V, we don't get to decide whether or not it's a great idea to if it's in compliance with the Title V regulation, which Jim is driving to do, plus make sure that abutters aren't harmed by the adjustments necessary. It's a worthwhile wait.
Mm-hmm.
So long and short of it, I like to.
Yeah. Although, yes, I agree with Kevin. This is just one hurdle that they have to get through too, Kevin. So, I think Ian, if you and Jim can hook up and kind of.
That's fine.
Like, yeah.
I appreciate your help here. Thank you.
All right. So should we continue it to another, actually make a date, Janet, or should we just wait to hear from Jim?
Lisa, there is someone from the audience who has their hand.
Okay, sorry.
The name is just listed Dare M. You can speak if you unmute yourself.
I believe I've unmuted. Hi. Yeah, no, I'm Greg Barron and Martina Calman.
You're the abutters.
Yes, exactly. And John Amato, our engineer, is online as well. But I'll go over our concerns with the project. We're not against the project, but we're very concerned about the amount of water flow that will be directed back onto our property. There is a lot of water that comes down through that area, and Ian's correct. At the present time, there's a swell on the high side of Ivy Road, but that's new. That's just been put there. Generally, there's a berm on the south side or the lower side of Ivy that has directed the water down Ivy towards Lake Drive. And generally, a lot of it would then run across the property that they're working on. If you look at the contour lines, you'll see that that would be the direction they go. So that berm that is there at the present time and has been there since we got the property is what basically directs the water, the top water down. In heavy wet seasons, I'll have 4 inches of water underneath my crawl space at the back end of the house. So there's the groundwater there is really pretty high. So our first concern is that that berm would be maintained so that any water coming down is going to be directed down towards Lake Street. And you might actually want to have a swale on the Lake Street side, because right now a lot of the water goes onto the property, not directly down to Lake Street. If that's directed, all the water coming down from up is directed down Lake Street down to or down Ivy Street to Lake Street. You might have more water on Lake Drive than you want. So the order of conditions, I would like to see that the berm be maintained along Ivy so that the water is directed down towards Lake Drive. The next thing that's of a concern on the plans is that we see the wall being put down as a 2-foot wall, but yet if you're doing a drafting type of a look at that coming from the top down, it's really going to be a 3.5-foot wall, and we want to make sure that the bottom of the wall is like 10 foot in, and then the top of the wall makes it farther over. But the blocks that you build this wall with, they step upward. So we'd like to make sure that whoever is doing the construction on the project understands that that's not the top of the line, where it's drawn, and simply the bottom of the wall is going to be at that lining. This discussion about directing the ground or the runoff water from the house to a dry well, I think that's a wonderful idea. I think that's great. Anything to push this stuff that way is a good idea. Rather than a stone drain type of situation along the property line to direct any water that might get over the berm or might come off the property, we're thinking that a clay swale, which would direct it down towards the catch pond, might be a better option, because it would be more likely to prevent the water from getting into the groundwater. And there's a problem that I don't have any thoughts or answers for, but that ground is going to be more compacted because of the height and the increased weight of the earth that's going to be put on it. It's like a coal being turned into a diamond. So it's going to decrease porosity as the groundwater comes down and hits that area. It is going to then want to move back onto our property. I don't have any particular answers as to what could be done, if anything, to that. But that is a potential worry of ours. So the final thing that with the swale or anything on that outside that's going to direct the water between our properties away from ours and down towards the catch pond needs to be maintained. Right now you've got a 2-to-1 slope, which is kind of steep and apt to erode, and other plant life being grown in there. So any order conditions would be that needs to be maintained in a functional position. So those are basically our concerns. As I said, we're not opposed to the project, but they just want to make sure that we don't have our property flooded out so that our cesspool system is not functional.
Okay, thank you. So,
John, I think John, you wanted to talk too. I think he was just talking to me on the phone, but that's all I have to say.
So, Ian and Jim, is that something, did you,
Yeah,
I've made some
Can I
notes, Lisa. Yeah.
yeah, just take some notes and you guys can discuss those when you meet.
Yeah, I just want to make one comment, the difference between a swale and that trench drain. If we put a swale in there, it will encourage the water to rush down a lot faster, which I don't think the conservation will want. And also the way that this trench drain actually turns and then comes to stone that it's got to go through, it will only trickle out. So it won't rush the water down there. It keeps it slow. And that's why I put a trench drain in there, not a swale.
Okay. Is John Amato on yet?
Can I make a suggestion, please?
Sure, Mike.
I'm sorry. These, it seems that most obviously all these concerns arise from, shall we say, getting into compliance with Title V, which is our purview. Okay.
Mhm.
So to the extent that Ian and his client are prepared to make the necessary changes so that the consequences to abutters, shall we say, can be met as much as possible without compromising Title V compliance, I'm suggesting that we give them all a chance to sit down together and put the engineering heads together and come up with, shall we say, good compromise solutions.
Yep.
I agree.
Rather than trying to do this but trial by fire in public, because I think a lot more can be done over a short period of time, especially with Jim giving the coaching in the background.
Perfect. You guys think you can work that out?
Sure.
All right.
Yep.
Okay. So we're gonna, I'm sorry, I forgot.
Motion to continue?
Yeah.
Motion to continue, yeah. Do we set a date or do we just wait until hear what Jim says?
I would rather set a date somehow.
We do need to set a date, and you want to do that in 2 weeks, right?
That would be the 23rd.
Yes, the 23rd, or do you want to have hearings on the 16th instead? Right now, we have no hearings scheduled for the rest of the month, so we can continue it to next month.
We can.
And you guys get together in a week's time?
Jim's pretty busy.
Yeah, I think we're safer going to the 23rd. There's no date safe.
I guess my thought for the board is, do you want to meet the day before Christmas Eve, or shall we try to figure out a time ahead of time and get it done on the 16th?
Jim, no one's doing anything for the holiday.
Not going anywhere. So
Okay, I have no life anyway, so that's okay. I'm all right with it.
The other thing too is we can make, do you guys want to, well, we can talk about this later, but do you want to make that meeting a little bit earlier?
Yeah,
Like 6 o'clock instead of 7?
yeah.
I'll have to check with,
Yeah, right,
Oh,
okay.
right.
All right.
TV.
So we'll
I can't
continue
say
it.
that.
We'll
I
continue,
second Kevin's motion to
continue it to the 23rd.
continue it. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll do a roll call. Kevin Baker,
Kevin Bigger, yes.
Gino Fratelloni,
Yes, Gina.
Louise Nichols,
Louise Nichols, yes.
Mike Zeldin,
Mike Zeldin, yes.
and Lisa Flanagan, yes. So we'll meet with you guys on the 23rd, hopefully.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, let's move on. I see Katrina's here, so let's move on to the COVID update. Or is Corey going to give the presentation tonight? I don't know.
Katrina's up, yeah.
Hi.
Hi. Missed
You
you
guys-
2 weeks ago.
I know. Or 1 week ago. It was only a week. It feels
was only
like
a week.
a year. Do you want me to start or would you want Jim to start?
Do you, Jim, did you want to start? I guess, yeah, we can start with Jim. Guess there were a couple of complaints and Scott has taken care of one of those. And I think Jim has also taken care of one of those too.
Yeah, I spoke to someone tonight who was, concerned. So maybe let me start with the complaint that, just so I don't forget it, kind of a global complaint that concerns when the governor changed the mask order, essentially saying, anywhere inside or outside, she's concerned that people in town aren't wearing masks regularly outside. I did mention kind of the challenge it is trying to get people to comply with that. She really wanted to reiterate how important she thinks it is, particularly when people are trying to be out and about on in public ways, to make sure people have their masks on, so that everybody, really out of consideration for everybody who's actually enjoying the outdoors, whether it's on the sidewalk in front of her house, whether it's on trails, whether it's in a park. So she really wanted that message across to the board that she's really concerned that whatever we can do to kind of get that message out to people that, if you're out and about, having your mask when you're passing by other people is really important out of consideration for them also. So I did have a conversation with this evening, and that's the message she wanted me to get across to the board.
Right. Is that the woman that listed the people on King Street?
I think so.
Or is this something different?
No, I think that's the one. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And we got the letter about another business too that Janet gave me at like 4:30 today.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to look at that one, but I will go out. I saw that one, so I'll go out and take a look.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
So then, I guess other updates. I'm sure you've all heard that the governor is rolling back the reopening to phase 3, step 1. There are stuff around the edges that need to be done. Probably some of the biggest. Outdoor gatherings seem to be the biggest thing. The table seating seem to probably be the next biggest thing in restaurants. The occupancy in stores it's a drop of 10%. Again, it's something they need to follow. And one of those complaints is about retail stores, so I'll have that conversation with them about the changes that are happening. I'll bring the copy of the changes down. Outdoor gatherings is another one that's kind of got reduced in that regard. So again, I think I think the governor's trying to tighten things up a little bit, hoping that maybe behaviors will change. I'm not quite sure what's in his mind, but I think that's what the idea is, to try to slowly tighten up and see if it works, and then tighten up some more if he needs to. So I'll work with the businesses to make sure they understand the changes that are in the going to phase 3, step 1, so that they can be in compliance. The second big thing that happened this week was on Monday, the State Department of Public Health made their guidance for quarantine. They lined it up with what CDC's recommendations are. And so you now have a 7, 10, and 14-day option for quarantine. And so some background from what I've read from the CDC site. Again, some of this is based, I think it's all based on their observation of cases and when they're seeing people convert to positive, and what the relative risk is by moving the dates from 14 to 10 to 7. And what they're trying to do is balance getting people to comply, because 14 days is a long time, particularly if you don't have the time off and you need a paycheck, and the risk of where people are actually converting. So a month ago they changed it to 10 with testing on day 8. And again, the idea was, according to the state epidemiologist, that very, very few people were converting to positive after day 10. CDC's kind of made a little bit more of a risk-based decision, saying, we're not saying a lot. I mean, most people are still by day 7, if you haven't converted, you're not going to. The risk is a little bit higher, but in their mind, at least the way I read the CDC information, if you could shorten the period of time but get better compliance, maybe you get a safer society, if you will. You're keeping more people in when it's necessary to keep them in. So there's a little bit of risk involved. So when we're doing contact tracing now, we are providing people with the guidance, the updated guidance from Monday.
Jim, I have a question about that testing.
Okay.
If someone's sick in your house, so you can't, so say my husband gets sick, and so then I can't go to work, correct?
So
I have to stay home.
COVID positive?
Right.
Right. So close contacts, quarantine the people who are close contacts. So if he's positive, and what's really frustrating for people, it's almost better if everybody in the house gets sick at the same time, so all of your isolation periods end at the same time. Because if one
That's my
person
question.
what's that?
That's my question,
Okay,
because
so if one person gets sick, if you can't all maintain the 6 feet and not be close contacts, everybody else's quarantine period in the house starts the day the person who is sick is released from isolation, because that's the last day that you're being exposed to somebody who's testing positive. So then the 7, 10, or 14 days start at the end of their, at a minimum, 10-day isolation period. So that conversation with people, when it was 10 and 14, that could be 24 days for people. And that's
Right.
that's a tough conversation to have with people.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, okay. It's so confusing now.
no, and again, I understand why they're changing things. Do I agree on a public health standpoint? They seem to have some statistics that balance, a shorter period of time, a little bit more risk, but maybe more people will comply, so they will. And again, if some of us have the luxury of having time off, so that if we get stuck quarantining, we're not going to lose a paycheck. And so that's, if you hear the Department of Public Health talk about it, if you hear CDC talk about it, it almost becomes an equity issue. So there's a bunch of things trying to be balanced there.
Great. So Jim, you and I talked today, and we as a board talked, I think last time, or maybe it was just me, about Market Basket. And I think that we've said that the two places that are the busiest in town are Market Basket, Donlands, whatever, and schools. So I'm not sure, and I think, Jim, you said to me this morning that this rollback doesn't necessarily mean going back to what we were talking about, the one entrance and the monitoring the capacity at Market Basket. And Jim wrote up a letter, really nice letter, that I'm going to send to you guys, and we can discuss it. But if you guys are in agreement, I think that might be something that we want to have Market Basket do, is go back to the one entrance and counting people going in. I'm not sure if the rollbacks are actually going to go back that far and make them do that. But I think it was safer when it was like that. So
I think given what's going on in Littleton, and given our particular character, and also our demographics, and also the access we have to the roads, and how many people get off and on and all the rest, I think that we definitely, for protection of everyone, including the customers of Market Basket, should require them at a minimum to have that one entrance concept strictly enforced to keep the population, because Market Basket is one of the places where you don't spend an hour. I mean, unless somebody's really wrong with your list. So it should be a quick in and out. And we've got other issues. And if we want to keep the schools open, and we want to keep people who have to go to work and can't be at home and have to be at home and don't want their kids home, I think we better really put the hammer down when it's appropriate to go beyond what the governor is doing, because he's addressing issues that we don't at the moment face. We don't have as many balancing things to address.
yeah.
I agree.
Okay.
I agree also. I mean, it's not going to hurt, and I think people will feel more comfortable.
Yeah, and Jim said that they've been a really good, what do you call them? They're good corporate. They're nice. They'll listen to us. I don't think they'll fight it too much.
As far as you know, is Donlands also playing along, Jim? I've only heard one or two anecdotes about Donlands. Do you have anything official coming across your desk?
So I have been there recently, probably in the last 3 weeks, maybe, because there was a complaint that came in. So I went down and I talked to, I'm not sure if it was the manager, the assistant manager. From what I could gather, the complaint was that there was either one of them didn't have a mask on. And when I talked to them, if you go into the store, they have the courtesy counter or booth or whatever it is, a customer service booth, and there's an office behind it. So according to the person I spoke with, they were in that space, didn't have their mask on, but they were in that space. So, I know everyone's kind of hyper concerned with the mask, but up until kind of the changes, I think with these new changes and the guidance, the old retail guidance used to be that and office guidance that you were in your own office space and nobody else was there, you could take your mask off. So again, it was, I think, a concern. The door was open. Again, whenever I do these complaint inspections, I go unannounced. I walk the store first, just so I can get a sense of what's happening in the store. So if there's other things, I can certainly talk to the manager about them when I talk to them.
Yeah. Can I make, we have two places. I'm leaving the schools off the boards.
Yep.
Jim, this is asking a lot. Instead of waiting for a complaint to come in, maybe it would help put Donlands and Market Basket, not necessarily on notice, but to be aware that you would just sort of pop in at random.
Okay.
I mean, rather than respond, I mean, this doesn't mean you shouldn't respond to complaints and make sure they make sense, but I think if they see you and you say you're doing a routine spot check, they'll then get the idea that they don't know when you're coming or the reason that you're coming, and it might help enforce compliance.
Sure. I have to say that in both of those stores, compliance is pretty close to as good as it's going to get, kind of thing. I mean, it's, I've in both of, and I don't know, probably 10 inspections at both locations total. If I've seen one or two people with masks that weren't compliant or being warned that weren't compliant, that would be probably the max of it.
Yeah, and the one place we can't do too much about it, because I think most of these cases are coming from family, I'll call them family gatherings. I think most of the cases we're seeing and the rise is, at least for this part of the world, is from folks getting together.
And we've seen that too, that it seems we're getting multiple cases at the same address. So whether it's going from parent to kid or however it's going, it seems once it's in a household, it seems to get more than one person in the household.
Yep.
All right. So I just forwarded, Jim emailed me a letter, kind of like a draft. So I just sent that to Janet, and I'll have Janet send that to you guys, and you can read it. And if you think it's great, and should Janet send that, Jim, or is that something that you would have to send from the Neshoba?
Actually, if you don't mind, maybe one of my stop-ins up at the Market Basket, I will hand deliver it.
Okay.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Special
Thanks,
delivery.
Jim.
Yep, they're very approachable. I mean,
Yeah.
One of the last time that you asked me to go up there about the front end arrangements and stuff like that, when I walked in the store, again, I go unannounced, the manager, the store manager, and the assistant manager are in those locations managing traffic. So they actually had to replace the people so I could talk to the manager, because they were actively managing, as you described, they're actively managing the front end. So,
Well, Louise, remember when you and I went? I mean,
Yeah.
like every 10 minutes, there was an announcement saying, stay away from, stay safe,
Back in
wear your mask. Where was that? Back in March or April?
back in the beginning, yeah.
And, I think maybe all of us, over the summer, everybody's progressed and kind of let their guard down a little bit too. Might be time to tighten things up. So.
at least I have just one more thing, if that's all right.
Mhm, yep.
So I got an email from the superintendent this afternoon, actually this evening. One of the classes are being closed down, and we had talked a little bit about, I'm regularly talking with school nurses, and there was some concern there. So I haven't had a chance. We played a little bit of phone tag today, me and the school nurse. I will catch her tomorrow to kind of, close the gap on what may be happening. There's some staff, or there's kids, or a combination, or some concerns, but I am in regular contact with school nurse. So, and we do talk things out to try to get a sense of what's happening. So I just want to let you know that I think about 6 o'clock, I got the email from Dr. Clenchey that it sounds like a class was closed and going remote.
Can you tell us what school or not?
I don't remember which one it was. I think it was Shaker Lane, but I don't remember.
Just one classroom, or?
That's what it sounds like. They had just one teacher's name classroom. So, yep.
Yeah, because I think we got an
That
email.
was an email, yeah.
We got an email from a teacher at Shaker Lane today too, wondering if we were going to talk about it tonight.
Yep.
You got that handled, okay?
So, well, and I'll like I said, I'll circle around with the nurse tomorrow morning to get all the particulars and figure out what else we may need to do.
Well, when we get to the numbers, that Katrina has with us, I think we'll start understanding why it's starting to get a little closer, closing in on the schools. So, okay.
All right. All right, is that, anybody else have any questions or comments for Jim before we move on to Katrina?
Jim, have you heard or seen anything about the few restaurants that we have in Littleton that are capable of putting on a real outdoor operation and then handle inflow, or used to handle the excess by asking people they want to come indoors, or have the few restaurants available, have they been in compliance as far as you can make out?
I will have to talk to Bridget Burley, our food inspector, get a better answer for you than that. I don't know the answer, but I will ask her and I'll get back to you.
Because the occupancy rates that the governor just put up are modest. That is, they just drop back, more symbolically than in a practical sense. So I just
Right.
Yeah,
that kind of was my take on the. Now I don't know if I don't know what he's thinking. Whether it's kind of walk people back slowly as opposed to kind of a hard stop. I just don't know.
Yeah, the other place, the other place that I don't know what we can do about are what are called the smaller gas station linked small little spots that congregation clusters get together, and very difficult to maintain distance where food, coffee is both being prepared and sold.
Okay.
Have you hit any of, not hit, but have you had any complaints come your way from any of those?
Not recently. There was one small gas station in the center of town we were getting some complaints on, but I don't think I've had one since the summer.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Jim.
Yep.
Katrina,
Great.
I don't want to hear from you, really.
I don't want to talk to you.
Oh, come on.
It's not you.
Nothing personal. Nothing personal.
Just, this isn't what I'd like to talk to you guys about. We'll put it that way. I'd much rather chat with you for other reasons. I'm assuming you can see today's lead page of the dashboard.
Yeah.
Okay. So, just going to go through the regular things that we talk about and then some health messaging at the end. Jim really covered a lot of what the governor, I think he's had 3 press conferences this week with announcements. So he covered a lot of the changes that are coming at us as we roll back to phase 3, step 1. So today's number of cases that were reported was over 5,000. So 5,675 cases. There's over 1,500 in the hospital, of which 300 are in the ICU. And today, 89 deaths were reported. This is a large jump. Oh, and the age of cases is still 59 years and younger is the bulk of the cases that are being identified. Everyone's kind of catching up to the 20 to 29-year-olds, which is unfortunate. The spread is much more broad across all age groups at this point. So this is the graph of confirmed cases since March. So you have the spring part of the graph, and you have the fall with this little dip for Thanksgiving reporting and the skyrocketing number. And then the last 3 days always trail off because their data hasn't all been reported yet. So as you can see, not only are we in our second wave, but our second wave is significantly higher than it was last spring. And that is because nothing shut down right now. So we are still mobile, we're still mixing, we're still socializing. All that stuff helps a virus transmit. So this is expected just to keep going up. So unless something big changes. So this week, the average daily incidence rate per 100,000 for the last 14 days was 50. Last week, that was 35. And at the beginning of November, it was 15. So we are on a rapid, as you can see, scaling up and not a good wall to run into. This is the daily confirmed cases for the past 6 weeks. I actually want to pause for a second because I was asked 2 really good questions from people who are trying to understand the data. And I think it's really important for people to understand this. So first, a daily confirmed case that we graph here are based on, they're tied to the date of the test that was conducted. So their first initial positive test. And as you can see, it's kind of clear when you can see there wasn't much testing going on Thanksgiving Day. There's 447. These were probably in hospital tests happening. But every time there's a case, it gets tied to the first positive case date, test date. And then also I was asked about how the DPH deals with people who get more than one positive COVID test. They were concerned that that person is counted more than once in these graphs, and they're not. So an individual is counted as a case once, and it is tied to the date of their first positive test. And they cannot be counted again for at least 3 months. And that's because the science behind it is not showing you have antibodies, and you're not going to get reinfected for at least 3 months, because at the time that policy decision was made of how to define a case, the data extended only 3 months. It's actually looking like it's further, so they'll probably change that at some point. But right now that you can't be counted as a case for more than one time in a 3-month period. And because reinfection is so rare, it's not going to be an issue. So back to this graph. There's a clear jump in the number of cases who tested positive in the week following Thanksgiving. So here's the low date. Here's Thanksgiving. We had a small bump just as people were getting tested before Thanksgiving. Testing was a little depressed the weekend after Thanksgiving. So you really see the bulk of cases getting diagnosed following Thanksgiving. And this is a significant jump up. I think that when I calculated it, if you compare Monday to Monday, day of the week have certain patterns of when people get tested and identified. So if you compare the Monday before Thanksgiving, there was 3,590 cases. And you compare it to the Monday after Thanksgiving, there was 5,465 cases. And that's a 60% increase in the number of cases in 1 week time. That's a lot, a big change.
Look where we were at Halloween. It's like 532 cases.
Yeah, and we were.
Times that. It's crazy.
Yeah, this is crazy. That's the only way to say it. This is the number of total tests conducted in the last 6 weeks, and we've been really steady, somewhere between 110 and 120,000, with a little blip on the Monday before Thanksgiving to almost 130,000. We had some depressed days of testing right around Thanksgiving. And then testing on the Monday after Thanksgiving was high, but again, it just returned back to the same, actually slightly lower numbers than it was before, leading up to Thanksgiving. So in terms of testing, Massachusetts testing program is actually pretty robust compared to many other states in the United States. However, the rise in cases that I just showed you on the last graph is not because we're doing more testing week over week. It's actually we're a little bit less now in this last week. And so the rise is really the rise in cases reported last week is not because we're suddenly doing more testing. It's because there's more COVID. And this is the test positivity chart. This gives us an idea of how widespread and how much COVID is in our communities. So the test positivity in early November, like right after Halloween, was about 2%. And then right before Thanksgiving, it was 3.43%. And since Thanksgiving, we've gone up to 5.86% for everybody. And when you take the college routine testing, and those students are getting tested once or twice a week, this is a very different testing scenario. When you take them out and think about the testing the rest of us and the rest of the residents of the state are getting, we have test positivity closer to 8%. And this really indicates widespread and exponential growth in cases. So this is very concerning. And we also saw this last week that the COVID levels in sewage is at an all-time high as well. So that's another indicator of widespread COVID spread across the state. So this is the daily confirmed hospitalizations. So this is the May. That was at the peak in May. And then now we're back on a steady upward trend. Unfortunately, we're seeing about 1,000 daily hospitalizations a day now. The governor actually announced this week that this increased by 44% in the week following Thanksgiving. It's a significant jump in a short period of time. And keep in mind that hospitalizations are a lagging indicator. So cases diagnosed today will lead to hospitalizations in 3 to 4 weeks. That's maybe around New Year's at this point. So the hospitalizations we see today, so these numbers are based on the cases that were diagnosed in early to mid-November. So when you think forward, so we're already having a large impact on our healthcare system now. And if you think about the 5,600 cases that were reported today, those will hit a proportion of those will hit our hospitals at the end of this calendar year.
Is there a lesser proportion of the cases that are hitting the hospitals now because we know more about the virus and we know how to
That's a really good question. So we know more about the virus. We have better, people know more. So maybe they're not getting as exposed as much. But I do think a large part of this is who is infected. So compared to last spring, where the large proportion of patients who were in the hospital and people who were just infected, everyone else was shut down. We had stay-at-home orders and weren't circulating. So the people who were getting sick are those who were older and like long care
nursing
living
homes.
settings, nursing homes. So they were just older in general. So those are more likely to have more severe COVID and more likely to have more adverse outcomes, like really severe outcomes. So now currently we have the bulk of our cases are 59 years or younger, so are less likely to have the severe outcomes. That doesn't mean there are not adverse outcomes to having COVID, and I hope we can discuss this a little bit later, that are really concerning. But they're just less likely to need the hospital. But there are a lot of things about in the hospital they can do now that they couldn't do in the spring, but that doesn't impact the number of people in the hospital. Hopefully we can prevent people from getting in the hospital. That's the goal. Did that make sense, Kevin? Okay. So I'm on the wrong slide on my notes. Hold on. So this is a chart of the non-ICU hospital capacity here in Massachusetts. And currently across the state, if we can take it as a whole, there's 81% of the hospital beds are occupied. And some regions are more impacted than other regions. So that's not a great sign. This actually was 60% 2 weeks ago. This is a big jump. And then my next one is the ICU. So this chart is the total ICU capacity, which for the state is currently 65% full. And the state has done a couple things related to hospitals. So first, they've opened a field hospital in Worcester this past weekend. And one is being prepared in Lowell to help. And they're trying to do that to help deal with this anticipated surge of hospitalizations that are going to come toward the end of the year. And they're also trying to hire medical professionals to staff the beds. So think about it, you can add beds easily, but if you don't have the medical professionals to care for the patients, those beds aren't really helpful. So even though they've added beds, they don't have the staff to care for them yet. So they're frantically trying to find people and ways to staff those beds. And to do that, the governor announced that they are they're taking away elective, non-urgent procedures and surgeries. They're going to postpone them so that they can redeploy those staff to the beds to care for COVID patients. So that's not care, it's not like if you have a heart attack, you won't get care. You should go. That's an urgent matter that has to be taken care of immediately. But if you have an elective surgery to help your back or something, and that could be postponed until the end, for a few more months, then they're going to postpone those kind of surgeries so that they can keep these ICU and recovery beds open and take those staff and put them in COVID units. So in general, the capacity figures for our hospitals are really concerning, given the rise of cases since Thanksgiving. So in 3 to 4 weeks, we're gonna have a crunch. And so if you get COVID now, and you are one of those with a severe outcome that needs to be hospitalized, there may not be a bed available unless something changes. So this is the number of daily confirmed deaths over the last 6 weeks. So this is the graph that I showed last week, but they've zoomed in just on the 6 weeks at the end. And you can see that the number of deaths every day is on an upward trend, upward trend. And keep in mind that if the hospitals get overwhelmed, the healthcare system and hospitals get overwhelmed, that the number of cases for COVID and they can't keep up, part of like lowering the death rate is having enough staff to care for the people appropriately. So if they get overwhelmed, this death rate will rise rapidly. That was part of the rise last spring. So this is not a good sign. This is the last indicator, the concerning final period on the whole saga. So I don't like seeing this go up. So this data is from last week's DPH weekly report. This is where I've been mapping the average, the rate per 100,000 by age group. And so this is based on the December 3rd data. The cases continue to be the same age groups, are continuing to be the highest, have the highest rates. So that's 59 and younger. All of these you can see kind of flattened, and that is because of the Thanksgiving holiday. That's a data reporting and lag from the holiday that's happening. So I anticipate tomorrow when the DPH data comes out that these will just continue their upward trend, if not steepen in their curve up. So there's no real difference about who's getting exposed and becoming COVID positive. So I've rearranged these a little bit. So this is the, when I've been calculating the average daily incidence rates for every of those geographic areas that we've been working with for months now. The average daily case rates that we calculate, that was based on last Thursday's report as well. So that's 12/3 data. The new report will come out tomorrow. So as you can see, all areas of the state, the county, the community groups that we've grouped them together with our border communities, the surrounding communities in the 495 belt, they're all trending higher compared to 2 weeks ago. So this comparison is last Thursday's, so December 3rd compared to the Thursday before Thanksgiving, whatever that date was. So last week, Littleton had 28 cases, and that calculated a rate of 20.5 per 100,000 people. And that's nearly double the rate we had 2 weeks prior to last week's report.
Katrina, did you get a chance to download with Jim on the snapshot of the data?
I will, and I'll get to that. And I've actually put that toward the end for a reason, and I'll show you when I get there. But yes, I have. So this is the graph of those numbers that I just showed you, but graph, so you can see the trends a little more visually. And if you notice, I cut us and started us in mid-September because you couldn't see it anymore. It's too many dates. But everything, this flattening that you see at the end is that lag time in the data coming in based on the holiday weekend. So this doesn't mean that the trends flattened. It just means we didn't have the data yet. There was a delay in reporting. So everything continued to trend up. The one thing I do have to say, this bright blue line is Littleton. And as you saw at the end of October and beginning of November, we were trending with the 495 belt. And then we took this abrupt turn and depressed for 2 weeks. So that took our rate from trending with the 495 belt to trending with our border communities and being right in line with them. So whatever we were doing at the end of October and beginning of November really worked for our rates. And if we can buckle down again and change our behaviors, we'll hopefully keep this rate from just going straight up.
No trick-or-treating.
No trick-or-treating. Yeah, guys, don't trick-or-treat. So keep using your cheese. Don't go trick-or-treating, all that good stuff. So this is the test positivity for all of those areas that we've been tracking. Again, this is based on last Thursday's report. Total test positivity for all areas were trending higher. again, there's a lag in the reporting. So they're probably more to come is what I'm trying to say, based for following the Thanksgiving holiday. One interesting thing is Littleton's been averaging about 800 tests, 825 tests for weeks. Like all November, it was just over 800. And suddenly the week before Thanksgiving, we had over 1,000 tests. So 200 extra people sought testing right before the holiday, which might be good. They're following, trying to be safer and testing before gathering or traveling, which would be awesome. But it also means that people are planning to travel or gather. So that's not awesome. And testing alone isn't enough. So I'm hoping they used every other mitigation strategy we've been talking about for weeks if they chose to do that. So, and this week's data that I present here doesn't actually show the impact of the school's attestation form that they had all the families sign saying they'd do the right thing over the holidays. So we should see some of that impact this week. So this is the graph of the same test positivity data I just showed. Again, it's trending higher for all areas. Littleton's test positivity tracks really closely with our rate. So the same pattern appears, which is good because that makes it less confusing. And this leveling off at the end has to do with the holiday, not that we are doing better. So this comes down to what everyone wants to know today is what's going on. So to summarize what I just said, we had an increase in the number of cases the week before Thanksgiving, and then a sharp rise right after Thanksgiving. And that was despite the same or slightly lower number of tests conducted over the holiday weekend and delays in reporting. So tomorrow's DPH report will cover the 14-day period from November 22nd, so the Sunday before Thanksgiving, through December 5th, which will be after Thanksgiving. So the question really is, what's Littleton going to look like tomorrow when the report comes out? And I'm very thankful we have a Jim who digs into Maven for us every week and kind of gives us that snapshot so we can talk about it. So this is Jim's sneak peek into the Maven data. And the numbers of cases who tested positive in Littleton, these are the number of cases who test positive for Littleton for the 14-day period. Remember when I said that cases, I'll explain that in a second. Let me just get back to the main message here. Littleton, as of Jim's sneak peek today, had 53 cases. And this was double the number from 2 weeks prior. So we've had a significant increase in the number of cases here in Littleton pre and post Thanksgiving. So what I was just about to say is, remember how the question the person asked me was about when the cases counted and how do you know when they fall off? Because sometimes it's confusing because it's a 2-week period. So the same person is counted. Like for example, the cases in this week, some of them were diagnosed this week. So that's really hard to understand. They were trying to understand the time periods. So when I talk to you guys and I talk to the school committee, I always compare, for example, today's numbers to something 2 weeks before, because these are two different unique sets of patients. There's no overlap. I don't have to worry about someone's counted in both of them. And then because they fall out as soon as they've been through the 14 window, this is a unique group and this is a unique group. And that means I can directly compare this number to this number without having to worry about someone being in both buckets. And this also helps me think about a trend over an entire month of data. So this is covering 2 weeks and this is covering the 2 weeks before that 2 weeks started. So this is a whole month time. So this is done. I do this very specifically just to make sure that I'm comparing new people to new people. So new active cases to new active cases. So does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the active COVID clusters by exposure setting that came out in last Thursday's weekly report. The households are still 94, 95% of the clusters that can be identified in our state. So just as Jim said, it was like once you find one cluster in a household, he's finding multiple people who are positive. And not surprising given the holiday that household and social gatherings are also being reported as settings. So there were 21 new clusters in social gatherings that were reported. And interestingly, these new clusters average 6.2 cases per cluster. This is actually a higher average than what we had been seeing for social gatherings. So whatever happened over Thanksgiving, people were gathering with more people than they had been before. So large holiday gatherings aren't the best settings to be in right now. And the other thing that was interesting is the restaurants and food courts clusters have increased over time. And in total, there's been 79 clusters at restaurants and food courts reported, averaging like 1 to 2 cases, or I'm sorry, you can't have 1 to 2 additional cases per each cluster. However, 30% of the restaurant clusters have been reported since the start of November. So if you think about widespread COVID is spreading and much more widely in our communities. So that makes these unmasked settings where you spend a lot of time with people who aren't in your household much more risky than they were in the summer when we were especially sitting outside in the same setting. So
Can I add just one more thing to the story? There is now evidence that the primary version of the virus that's circulating in our part of the world is a mutated form of the original one back in May, if there was an original one. And although you don't get any sicker with this one is far more infectious. Not far more. It's about 5 or 10% more infectious. So in other words, it's easier to get this one. That's the general thrust of what's happening.
Weeks. That's not a good sign. So this is another notable piece of data from the report. So this comes out of the weekly report. This gives us the outcomes related to case and contact outreach. So things like the contact tracers are doing, like Jim's team. So unfortunately, between November 15th and November 28th, contact tracers were unable to reach nearly 40% of cases. And that's compared to the week before, that was 15%. So something fell apart in this last 2-week period between mid-November and end of November. And I heard today that contact tracers only follow up with somebody if their positive test comes back within 3 days. If it comes back 4 to 7 days or whatever it is, it's too late to do the contact tracing effort. It's not, too much time has passed. So they don't even try to contact those people. So if tests are being delayed, if the testing system is getting overwhelmed or the contact tracing system is getting overwhelmed or people are not answering their phone, then this contact tracing effort kind of falls apart and we lose this layer of Swiss cheese, this layer of protection from our toolkit. So the fact that 40% of cases were not reached is a really serious concern and indicates that our test, trace, isolate process is under some strain. Let's hope this does not look this way tomorrow. So let's follow up with a little bit of public health education stuff. So the first thing is if the contact tracers call you, please answer the phone. Like I just said, 40% of cases were not reached, but there's still 25% of contacts they can't get a hold of, and that's consistent week over week that they can't get 25% of contacts. So please answer the phone from contact tracers. And I think Jim's mentioned before that there's a state, it comes up as a state contact tracing or something on your phone or from the Neshoba Board of Health. So just please answer the phone. Do your part of that. And so this is an infographic slide from the state. This is an image that they try to depict an actual outbreak that happened following a dinner party. So there were 4 families gathered for a meal. 11 of the 15 family members became infected, including some children. and one elderly family member was in the ICU. So given the sharp increase of cases, the test positivity, the hospitalizations following Thanksgiving, that sharp rise, I really hope people are going to rethink Christmas, Hanukkah, New Year's, any other winter holiday that we have coming up. So the state does have a website, and they've updated it. There's a lot more information on it regarding winter holidays. So visit www.mass.gov/holidays during COVID-19 in Massachusetts for more information. It has the updated travel order, as well as some ways you can help protect your family. And a very beautiful image. So I saw this public health campaign. This one actually comes out of Washington State. So I want everyone to just remember that because there's widespread COVID spread transmission going on in Mass right now, anything we've done in the past is not as safe as it once was to do. You will have an increased risk of contracting COVID if we just keep up the same thing and not changing our behaviors now. So if you do choose, hopefully we're reducing the number of socialization events that we have been doing just to help slow the spread. But if you do choose to gather with others from outside your household, please remember fewer, shorter, smaller, safer. So fewer gatherings of shorter duration with a small number of people, and be safer by wearing a mask, keeping physical distance, meeting outside. And then here's all of those mitigation strategies that we've talked about week after week, ways that you can help layer up and protect yourself and others. And we need to double down and maybe add a few more layers to your individual choices of how to protect yourself, but that also protects the community. And there are things that hopefully we can beef up on the state and local government and policies, things like that, that might help protect everyone. And then I think Lisa was involved in the mask up signs that are around town. So the big thing that you could do right now is put a mask on yourself and just wear it every time that you are out of the house and in public or around anyone who does not live with you. So even if you're inside your home with someone who's outside of your household, please wear a mask. So that's today's. Sorry, I don't have good news.
I have some more bad news, if you're not bad news, but to add a little bit to the flavor. This has been something I've been watching and with others. Let me just put it up real quick so that we know what we're dealing with here. I'm wondering, can you folks see? Yes, you can see the single slide, I hope.
Yep.
Yep. Okay. What's happening is that once you finish your quarantine period and have been tested and presumably are free of the virus, the game isn't over. It turns out that there are long-term complications, even in mild cases of COVID, that are starting to come up more and more, that are becoming more obvious. And this would be alone motivation for people to mask. The most common long-term effect is continued fatigue, shortness of breath. That's the very first one that you see on this small slide. The chest pain, difficulty concentrating. I'm thinking of the age group that's being affected the most right at the moment. Depression, muscle pain. I won't read them all. More rare is inflammation of the heart and some other functions that affect major major functions of the body. And of course, the critical question, I guess, that must approach everyone is what % of COVID patients, in other words, once you have the disease, what is the report? Now, this is still being collected because the smoke is slowly lifting from this rather dangerous follow-up. This could be as high as 21% with mild disease. So that means 21% of all those who have recovered from mild disease, that is barely, mild symptoms and all the rest free, develop these, shall we say, long-term complications after they're free of the virus. And 45% of the patients, it's estimated, that have suffered severe cases of COVID. And the persistence of these could last up until 90 days, which happens to be the limit of a particular study, the most rigorous study that's been available so far, but we're still waiting for many more. I do know there are many more studies ongoing. A lot of them are going to be released in the next several weeks. But I think for us, we ought to take, shall we say, early notice of this, although we're coming to it late, but like most things with this disease. And this is a high motivation for people to think about their long-term, midterm and long-term reasons for wanting to mask up and take mitigation efforts to protect themselves from the disease. So this, I think, is something that we should start including in our materials that we make available to not just our townspeople, but everyone that we know who's involved in trying to, as it were, get their hands on, shall we say, reducing the frequency of this disease. If nothing else, this should add to motivation for people. So it's not a simple matter of just having a mild form and bang, you're done. It looks as if you could have long-term effects.
Serious stuff. When are they going to shut everything down again? I know it's the economic part, but it just seems like it's not going away and it's not going in the right direction.
We need some direction from Uncle Charlie.
Yeah, well,
I know you, Mike, you said he has advisors and stuff like that, but
well, yeah, but he doesn't. This is not a criticism. I mean, he's trying to keep our state afloat economically. So if you shut everything down and there's no, shall we say, nothing coming to the rescue, and if you look a little south of us, I don't know if you noticed, but we've got people who are standing around and not doing anything that they should be doing. It's sort of obvious, but they're not doing it. So basically, the only thing that could help out a little bit would be obviously the financial support of people who are suffering from job loss or curtailment of their work. And that's all sectors of the economy. And in Littleton, we're a little luckier than most, but it's creeping in. It's becoming more visible. And another aspect of this, which I have no feel for yet, because I don't know where to get the data, is anyone in town, because of this disease, suffering from food deficiency, not having enough food to eat? I'm talking about families. I think the elderly are probably being covered all right, but I'm not sure. But this also has long-term effects when people don't have enough food. Makes them more susceptible to diseases, in addition to COVID. But, in terms of 495, we're in a very tough spot.
Are the schools still giving out meals? Does anybody know? The grab and go meals?
They are, yep.
Good.
So which brings me just to raise the question, it seems to me that the only thing we can really do, we can't do much about the broader economy. We can focus a lot on doing the best we can to keep our schools open and available so that people who can work will. We do understand the risk. They understand the risk. We hope we can change the behavior with the material that Katrina and others have provided that we've worked on, but I'm hoping the last slide, thanks to Corey Painter, put it together. That last slide is scary enough because it means that the casual mask user is in grave danger. They can get the disease and it may not be over for them. So focusing on the schools, it would seem to me that to the extent that we can do this until the effects of a vaccine take hold, which won't be until this spring probably for us, the best we can do is to try to implement a testing program in schools. So we can do, not so much because the schools are not yet a place where clusters begin, as far as I can make out. Most of these are happening outside the schools. They're happening in people's homes. and in other gathering places.
So is that your segue into our little talk about testing in school?
Just, there's no segue. I mean, this is something that we and the select board and the school committee should grapple with almost immediately. And I'll just stop there.
Katrina, did you have anything else to say? Or Corey, or?
I don't have anything specific. Have been trying to understand what data is available for schools and what questions it can and cannot answer. The details are not available in a way that I can, get them. So I'm digging. And Dr. Clenchey said he'd meet with me to help me understand that process for the DESI data and other things. But yeah, the school stuff, it does seem like the higher the rates are in the community, the more likely you'll start identifying cases in school. I know the schools have sent out a number of health notifications over the last week and a half following Thanksgiving, more frequently than they had up until Thanksgiving. And so once you start having cases appear among the community, school community, you have increased the risk of having cluster events inside the school. So let's hopefully we can just keep adding layers of cheese to help protect the schools, which is our probably highest densest setting in our town. So testing would be a great layer to add to that toolkit.
All right. Well, I'll mention that Mike and I met with Cindy last night about the consortium testing that Corey and John have been talking about, and the first thing that we finalized last night was to set up a survey for the parents to see if there's any interest in testing the kids. So Mike, I did have the survey. I just didn't realize that was the survey. It was for Newton Public Schools. So Cindy thought that was the first step for us to take in order to start seeing if we can get some funding, seeing if parents can support it financially, also helping to financially support it too. So did you want to add to that, Mike? I guess we need to work on a survey, and I'm not sure. Does Janet do that for us? Do we have Dorothy Malone go in on that with us too? When do we get Mike Fontanella and school committee involved? I'm just throwing questions out. John, Corey, Mike, you guys can all chime in.
Oh, Lisa, we met with Dr. Clenchey and Mike last night, and we had a discussion over the possible approaches for testing, and also we discussed the survey. So I think Corey sent out the survey to Mike and also to Mike Zeldin, and it just gives just a baseline of what type of information that the town would need to collect in order to get a good idea as to what level of interest, the participation rate that we would hope to have, and also whether there be financial support behind this, because those are based on what we've heard from towns that are already implementing this. Those are some key parameters of how much the townspeople are willing to participate to have their children get tested, and how much support they'll be able hopefully to provide.
Yeah, there is some resource, but I believe that the first step, and it should be implemented, in my view, very quickly. And I think probably Jim can help with this, along with other folks who've had direct experience in, shall we say, good, we'll call public healthcare surveys. This is sort of like a specialized kind of thing, I think. And on the assumption, big assumption, but an assumption that most parents would like to have this testing regime in school, the question then becomes, and that has to be answered, what kind of testing, what does it give that makes the investment of N number of dollars, whether it's out of their pocket, how much was out of their pocket, how much is it the town, and how much assistance can we get from the state and whatever's left to the federal government. All right.
Well,
So yeah.
Oh, so Mike, in regards to that, I think the towns that are already engaged in this went in with the assumption that there's not going to be any support from the state because there hasn't been to date. And you know the answer for federal support. So I think if this is something that's going to be sort of a homegrown type of movement, that's the way that should be that it should be put out to the community, that this is something that we feel is going to benefit the schools because it allows the schools to stay open. We could use the examples that are being observed at both Wellesley, Brookline, and Somerville of where they were able to get this up and going, and in cases where it worked, where they were able to detect clusters. And the key thing there is detecting these cases in asymptomatic individuals. So, you know, the thing of like, all right, great if we catch somebody that's symptomatic, but it's the asymptomatic cases that you want to catch. And that's where this net is going to be proven to be useful.
Yeah, if all I'm saying is if the testing regime can address that question, it's probably worth every dollar that we can get to spend on it. But we have to face. I don't want to leave any stones unturned because I don't think there's anything lost by approaching the state reps who gain a lot from our support in this town and seeing what they can do. And I do know there's some CARES Act funds still available for this town. I'm not saying it's the only thing. We're probably competing with other things, or this would compete with it. But given the fact that how crucial the schools are for the economy of this town, I need to emphasize that. So this public health issue goes not just to the disease itself and people's health in general, but it goes to this, shall we say, the sustainability and the resilience of the town financially. It's a real gut puncher.
Okay, so how can we get the survey out fast?
Well, if Mike Fontanella has it and John has discussed it with him, Jim, have you had a chance to see this, or is this the first you've heard of it?
Lisa mentioned something earlier. I don't know if it was today or the other day when we spoke, that you were looking to do this. I've not been involved in making surveys, but it sounds like you probably have already surveys with those other communities for those communities to kind of gauge interest and what they'd like to do.
Yeah, that's what we have.
Okay.
What I'm asking, that probably has to be pruned and adapted to Littleton, I guess, to where we are.
So I haven't seen it. And how is this kind of going along with the state's offer of Binex to the schools too? Is that?
No, I think John can speak to it, but it's my impression that the state continues to emphasize if you have symptoms, we'll test you.
Okay.
So yes, the pilot program that's being rolled out, I think Littleton was selected to partake in it, is to only screen with the Binax Now rapid antigen test individuals that may be symptomatic. So this is does not cover anybody that appears that's asymptomatic and does not by any means does any type of surveillance. It's just for when a student shows up at the nurse's office that may have some, may appear to display symptoms consistent with COVID-19, that they will roll out that test and do the 15-minute test for them right there.
So you'll have two testing programs potentially.
Well, this is we're still in the process of trying to work things out. I guess when we handed, so I forwarded material to Dr. Clenchy and Mike Fontanella in terms of what programs are available from current vendors for screening, and also a spreadsheet on what current approaches are being used by towns that are currently engaged in a active screening program, and other towns that are trying to consider it as well. So there's a wealth of information there in terms of what other towns have done or are doing, and what vendors are currently out there. So I also want to comment that this landscape is rapidly changing, that there are more, I guess the technology is improving. So when I started looking several weeks ago at the number of vendors who were doing screening, it was just a handful, but now it seems that there's more opportunities available, more things that the town could potentially pursue. And it's just a matter of deciding what groups we want to start out with in terms of testing, and what how much the town can afford. So,
yeah, in this connection, I've because of time, and I can be stopped cold in my tracks if the board so requests, I've put out the call to basically identify an MD with whose backgrounds in infectious diseases and basically understands how testing can be brought to bear on asking the question we want to ask, which is John has correctly identified as surveillance. That is, we want to see the asymptomatics. The people who are carrying the disease, get them as early as possible. The design of that testing program differs sharply from what we'll call, oh, you don't feel well. That's a totally different story. So the two of them are two different pathways. The last one deals with something else, which is how much are we going to burden our healthcare system? This one is, can we basically reduce the frequency of the disease, which accomplishes several objectives at the same time? So I'm trying to get us some solid, what we'll call MD type, shall we say, input to our testing program to make sure the question we're addressing is fitted to the technique that we use that John has mentioned. John already probably has a short list, which should make the process very easy for that MD to assist us with.
We're working on it.
Yep. So basically you can know in short order what would work, biggest bang for the buck, and then we'll then pursue how much it's going to cost. And the easier the test, the more independent the test is of personnel. This is very important. If we don't have to bring in basically healthcare workers or people who need special training, especially if it could be a home test, that would be very helpful. That should help us a long way. So we'll see what shakes out in the short order.
So I do want to comment. One of the things that we've learned from the experiences mentioned to us by the various towns that are doing the testing. So Wellesley, for instance, is doing an approach where the testing is done at home. It's a it's the pooled testing. So the teachers and they've extended the testing to the middle school and high schoolers, and they take the testing is the samples are collected at home and then they're brought back to school the following day, and then the pooled testing is then sent out for screening, and then they were able to identify if there's any positives within that pooled sample. Then they were able to break it down to potential pairs and then have those go on for secondary testing. So those are things that we can consider, hearing the trial and errors from the other towns as to if they were to do testing at a certain site, how does, what would be involved there. So there's a lot of factors that we would need to take into consideration, but the trial and error, all of this is sort of been worked out by the other towns. So we have that to our benefit. So we can expedite things, definitely expedite things if we want to move forward with this.
Well, I think that's what Mike and I were talking last night. Like, who's going to help us start this? I mean, it would be great if we could have started yesterday or 2 weeks ago, but is there, along with the testing program, do we get some guidance? Do we get somebody, do we get a consultant that helps us start? And I know Mike has
Go ahead, John.
So Lisa, I guess I guess with the town being part of this pilot, this the Binax Now rapid antigen testing pilot program, the infrastructure is going to be sort of established by the state, since we're taking part in that. And one idea that we might be able to build off of is, because that infrastructure is going to be in place because of our participation in this pilot program. If we were then to pursue our own program, that could be, we could use that infrastructure that's already in place from that pilot program for our own testing program. So some of that legwork will be taken care of by the state if we do decide to pursue our own program. So that's one big burden that's taken out. And with that in place, another important thing to consider is a reporting structure. So again, being part of this pilot program, the concern about how the reporting would entail is more or less remedied by the fact that you're already in this program. So there's a structure in place. That was a hurdle that some of the other towns had to deal with, but now that's already,
On that
that's
work.
already there.
All right. The other question that I had was, and maybe Anthony can help us with this. We're crossing boundaries. We're going from Board of Health to school committee and Dr. Clunchy. What's the process now? Should we, the first thing was the survey, and I think we've agreed that it needs to come from the school committee. It can't come from Board of Health or school department, the town schools.
So I think a conversation with Superintendent Clenchey and the school committee would be a first step, right?
They seem to be already engaged with this.
Are they engaged enough, or is it?
I think that if the select board and Anthony, shall we say, collectively started saying this is a good idea, or we want to see what you can do, and make an effort to see if they can get, shall we say, start at least lay the groundwork for identifying the resources that may be necessary. I mean, once the survey comes in, we'll have an idea of whether or not the school population or the parents and teachers and whoever else is going to be polled for this is going to be interested in it.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not doing a whole town. All right.
No.
Right.
So I want to comment on Mike's. I'm sorry.
Kevin has a question?
I think the most important part of this is to actually identify if there's enough buy-in from the community to actually get the program done.
Yeah. And I want to make a point that we don't need to think of things in a large scale. If when this is brought out to the community for potential buy-in, it might be a good to make the point that we can start off something small. So it's not something that we're going to say this is a townwide testing program. No, this would be a small. Look at it as another pilot program where you're doing a small subgroup screening of a small subgroup, say within just say the part of the teachers, part of the staff, and just see how that works, and and use that as your initial test for the program. And if it does seem successful, then you then expand it even more. So I think it's just conveying that to the community that this is going to be a large, massive endeavor, that we're going to try a small program, see how it works, and then if we deem it successful, then we can start to expand it out.
Lisa, would it make sense to set up a meeting with maybe a representative of the Board of Health? I'm happy to join with the superintendent and discuss it further.
Definitely. School committee or just Dr. Clunchy and Mr. Fontanella and Board of Health, and anybody else? Or just you?
That's a good start. If the select board member wants to join, they're able to, that's fine. If not, and they want me to handle it for them, that's fine too.
Okay. Yep. Mike, would you like to be our representative, or do you want me to do that? Or do you want to should we talk about it off camera?
Let's talk about it off camera.
Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah, that'd be great, Anthony. Because it's going to be, obviously it's going to be a it's big, it's a big thing, a big undertaking, but I think it sounds like it's the right thing to do. Kevin?
Is it too forward of me to propose that the clerk of the Board of Health try and get some sort of draft of a survey that we can have prepared for the meeting with the school committee and the...
We have a draft. We have a sample of a survey from Newton Public Schools, and John sent that to school committee, I think.
Oh, great.
Yeah, it's pretty basic. Mike sent it to me. It's basically just, do you have kids in school, and would you be interested in paying? And then I think at the end, Mike, it said, even if you don't have kids in school, would you be interested in donating to, the program? So.
Well, the survey I think was really meant, in talking to folks from Newton, as far as I understand, that they boil it down to wanting to enlist people who were on their record as being interested in the schools. It's a different culture, I guess, than what we've got here. I mean, I don't want to, we're mainly interested in how people who have direct connection with the school through the kids or otherwise any loyalty, they're probably on someone's mailing list for the schools to get the survey.
Yeah. And it's also a bigger, I mean, in the survey, it said, which elementary school is your child at? And there were like 4 or 5 of them. We've got one little one. So
only 4 or 5. Okay. So there you go.
That was in an elementary school.
Yeah.
Two high schools and other, so, so they're a little bit different than our school system. All right. Yeah. Anthony, I can't meet on Tuesday nights, unless it's after 7:30. And Mike, are you available any night?
Yeah, I can get out of most of the stuff I have to do after 7
All right.
o'clock.
All right. Does anybody else have anything more to add about the testing or the COVID update before we move on to correspondence?
Yeah, this is Kevin Davis, if you wouldn't mind.
Hey, Kevin.
Hey, how's it going?
What are you in Bali?
No, this is the picture from when my family was in Hawaii almost a year ago to the day. So
You're lucky.
yeah,
Nice to get that trip in while you could.
exactly.
Yeah. All right.
No, I just wanted to bring you guys up to speed during a meeting that Kevin Baker and I had with Michael Hugo. Just to refresh his memory, he is help me out, Kevin. My mind just blanked on what he does for a living.
The Director of Government Affairs at the Massachusetts Association of Health Boards.
There he is.
Oh.
So
say that again really fast, Kevin.
So he basically has taken on the charge to meet with all of the individual boards of health and the individual deputy secretaries and the secretaries of the Department of Health in Massachusetts and all that kind of good stuff. And it's kind of taken it his challenge to get the enhanced exposure notification turned on. And he reported back to us that the state has gathered its information from the RFR and they're rapidly moving forward. So as you remember, in Katrina's talk, there was a 40% drop off in the ability of the contact tracers. This is a more automated tool that would help that manual process out. So helping bring back some of that, hopefully to reduce some of that contact. The RFR bids were closed on December the 5th, which was just about 4 days ago. And from his report, all indications are that the state will aggressively move forward, was the word that he used, and hopefully we'll be able to change some of that dearth on that. So he was very upbeat about that, and that's also very good news for us.
2 weeks.
Yeah. So we're guessing like the beginning of January-ish or so, and he basically thanked us for bringing this to his attention, alleviating some of his concerns and educating him, and then helping drive this so that the state starts moving forward.
Excellent. And we're going to need this for sure, even if the vaccine arrives, especially when the vaccine arrives. Good timing.
Yeah.
Late, but good timing. Yep.
Yes. It's late, but I'll take it. I don't, California just turned theirs on this week. So that's all good. So the West Coast from top to bottom of the West Coast is completely covered now. They're using the national database. So this is all really good stuff.
Yep.
If we can get the rest of New England then to get into it, that would mean that we have from Maine all the way down to about South Carolina in. So that would
It's Maine and New Hampshire, right?
It's Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont. Vermont, not quite, but Vermont's in the process of getting it. So we just got to get New Hampshire and Maine in on the
Kevin,
go.
Kevin Davis, Anthony, you look a little puzzled. I don't know. Do you know what what they're talking about? You fill them in really quickly, Kevin?
Really quickly.
Show me your phone, Kevin.
Yeah, really quickly. You have a smartphone, and that smartphone has a sensor in it. It's called Bluetooth. It's what's using your earbuds that you're using right now. You're going to use that sensor in a program that's already installed on your phone, and it's going to give you the ability to detect how close you are to an individual and how long you've been next to that individual. It's privacy aware protection, so that way it's not giving away that you were, in a specific location, because that's not allowed. What it's doing is it's just saying that you were near somebody. If they test positive, you were near that person, and they'll calculate that all out and give you that. All the data stays on your phone, so you don't have to worry about sharing Big Brother or anything like that. So that's all really good stuff.
So Anthony, Massachusetts it's on our phone, but it hasn't been activated, right, Kevin?
Correct. Correct.
But Kevin Baker went to Connecticut.
Right.
And
Yeah. As soon as
on.
I crossed the border, the thing buzzed, beeped, and was like, "Oh, do you want to turn this thing on?" I was like, "Okay." Swipe, click, it's on. So we have close contact, and then they get
pretty neat.
Yeah, but they still let Kevin back into the state. I don't know if it works.
How do you know?
Because I had mine on.
Oh, and now Mike Zeldin is somewhere nice and warm. Do you know your background's up, Mike?
Sure. Yeah, it does. Yes, it's what is it? Yes, it goes on automatically at a certain time of night. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
All right. Have we any questions about COVID? Anybody?
Good.
Oh, so bad. Okay. Thank you again, Katrina. I think we just got your email with your slides, so I think some of those should go up on LCTV. Janet, I think definitely the one about the holiday, that pretty one that you had up there, like the pretty. All right.
Yeah, just let me know if they can't access them. I'm happy to. I've been putting them on a slide kit they can access, so just let me know which ones.
Okay.
Okay.
Janet, can you forward those to me as well, please? Janet?
Absolutely. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody. We're going to move on to correspondence. Anybody? I have some correspondence, but I think Jim has already taken care of it. And then another correspondence that Scott has taken care of. There's something about the Smith Conservation Land, but I think we'll probably table that for another. Is that all right if we table that?
Didn't we already deal with that? The pesticides?
I don't. Well, they went to select board on Monday, and I think they were waiting for some new report to come out before they can make some more decisions and recommendations. So, all right. Anybody else have any correspondence at all? Nope. Okay. Any member comments? I wanted to mention Light and Water for putting up the banner near the post office. I wanted to thank them. Kevin, I think you deserve big thanks too for getting all those people together way back when.
Yeah.
Katrina and her group.
Oh.
So, yeah, I really appreciate that.
Thankful for them. That's all.
Sorry?
Just thankful for them. I mean,
I know. We needed them in May, right?
November.
Last May.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
The only other comment I had was I thought it would be really neat if we got all the folks that were on town boards to do some sort of like PSA, especially with like the holidays coming up, and get LCTV involved, just on like a mask up campaign. Like I know the word's out at the transfer station and with the sign over the post office, but wouldn't it be cool to do like a gallery view Zoom with multiple people that are town officials and elected board members and employees, just saying happy holidays, mask up, be safe. You've done a great job so far. Don't relax now.
I think Anthony, in his new position, is in a very good position to organize such an activity like that.
Well, and And the folks at LCTV, like I know they've done it with Scouts, like they're really good at making that all happen.
Well, I know Cindy wanted the Brady Bunch picture of the Board of Health and for the year in memory, for the year we want to forget. But
it might just be a cool way to help get the message out for the holidays.
Yeah, Kevin, I could talk to Mark, Corey. It's actually a nice idea. I like it.
Yeah.
you wear a Santa hat, Kevin?
Definitely.
All right. No more member comments at all? All right. I guess we have minutes to do. Do you guys feel like doing minutes?
Just two.
Sure. We can do it quick.
I just wanted to say, I guess I didn't read them, but on the November 18th minutes, Janet, I guess we're just following up. Somebody was talking about how people at the transfer station were not wearing masks.
Mm-hmm.
Now there is some signage up there, and also the solar sign is there too. So I looked at them on email, so I can't remember the person that made the comment, but that should have been addressed. So other than that,
from LCTV.
I didn't hear you, Kevin.
I think it was Dave from LCTV.
Yes, I think you're right, Kevin.
Okay. So do I have anybody else have concerns about the minutes for the 18th? So I have a motion to accept the minutes for November 18th.
Motion to accept the minutes.
I'll second.
Great. Roll call, Kevin Baker,
Baker, yes.
Gino Fratelloni.
Yes, you shut me off. Every time I see you put me on there.
All right, Louise
You-
Nichols,
Louise Nichols, yes.
Mike Zeldin,
Mike Zeldin, yes.
and Lisa Flanagan, yes.
Oh.
Okay, and then so the meetings for the minutes, I'm sorry, it was on my phone.
12/2.
December 2nd.
December.
For a second. I just mentioned that we were going to get Mike Fontanella in on a meeting, but we did not. And then John has kind of talked to him. So that was the only change that I had. So,
Okay.
So anybody else have any questions or concerns about those minutes for the second?
I sent Janet a small change, which I'm trivial. I'm sure she can get it in. No problem.
Okay. So do I have a motion to accept the minutes for December 2nd?
So moved.
Accept it.
And is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thanks, Louise. So we'll do a roll call. Kevin Baker. Okay. Gino Fratelloni.
Yes, Gina, yes.
Louise Nichols.
Louise Nichols, yes.
Mike Zeldin.
Mike Zeldin, yes.
And Lisa Flanagan, yes. So, all right. Public comments. Anybody still here?
No, we have two people, but no hands are raised.
Okay. So we'll, I think we're going to schedule, today's the 9th. So we're going to keep the meeting for the 16th and the 23rd.
Yep.
Just because we're probably going to need it. Sorry. And I don't know about anybody else, but on the 23rd, if you want to, well, Janet's going to check to see if we can meet earlier. Unless
6 o'clock.
7 o'clock is best for everybody. We'll just leave it like that. What's the consensus?
I'll go anywhere.
Yep.
I'll be here. Let me know if you need me.
So
Probably just
earlier or
easy to
late?
leave it.
Earlier, just keep it at the same time?
6 o'clock.
You want it an hour earlier, Gino? It depends on LCTV whether or not they can, they have enough people.
You want to have it 5 o'clock?
I can't have it at 5 o'clock. We have to check LCTV first to see if they can do 6 or 7.
Okay, 6 or 7, whatever.
I guess that's the only option.
Oh,
Anyway, all right. Anything else?
that's it. We thank you for the entertainment.
Jim, are you all set? Did you have anything else to add? Sorry. Before
all
you
set.
adjourn.
Nope.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn
Motion to adjourn.
and a second.
I'll second.
Great.
Keep your mask on. Hey, Mike, put your mask on.
Roll call, Kevin Baker,
Yes.
Gino Faralloni,
Jane, yes.
Louise Nichols,
Louise Nichols, yes.
Mike Zeldin.
Mike Selden, yes.
All right, and Lisa Flanagan, yes.